In this class I want to talk about change management and make some general comments about this topic. Change management is dealt with in several classes on the course, and they should be checked and read over as well and studied. But let's look at some general points about change management. First of all, definitions of change management. And this is quite straightforward, but essentially what we've got is an organization, and the organization changes, and it changes to a different organization. So pictorially I've represented one here as a rectangle which changes into an ellipse. But it's the process of change. It's moving from one type of organization to the other, which represents the change. Now, a structured approach to shifting or transitioning individuals, teams and organizations from a current state to a desired future state. That's the definition on Wikipedia. It's moving from one particular state, one particular configuration, to a different one. And this could be moving the type of organization, the structure of the organization. It could be something to do with changing the way teams and personnel are deployed within the organization and used within the organization. It can be any aspect of the work of the organization. If it was done one way in one time period and done a different way in the next time period, there has been change. It's as simple as that. The process, tools and techniques to manage the people side of the business change to achieve the required business outcome and to realize that business change effectively within the social infrastructure of the workplace. Now these are very formal statements and quite complicated statements in many respects, but the idea behind them is actually very simple. It's the process, the tools, the techniques to manage people so that people will change their working practices from one type of working practice to a different type. They're able to move effectively from one set of tasks to a different set of tasks. Now, the reason why they may have a different set of tasks may be because the technology has changed, or the product has changed, the requirements on them has changed in some way. But all of it, of course, is within the wider social structure. People still remain people. People have certain sets of skills to go to school, to go to college, to go to university or whatever, and they have certain sets of skills. So the change must be compatible with what is possible and what is sustainable from, if you like, a human point of view. So it's moving from one situation to another. It's essentially as simple as that. Now the activities involved in, defining and instilling new values, attitudes, norms and behaviours within an organisation that support new ways of doing work and overcoming resistance to change. Well, that's what change is. It's working with new values, new ways of thinking, new ways of operating, new attitudes towards the particular task or towards the work itself in a wider context. It's looking at the norms, what we consider to be the accepted way of proceeding. We have set routines in our lives. We do certain things, and at work we do certain things, and we behave in certain ways, and we conduct ourselves in certain ways, and we work in certain ways, and these are the norms for us. And when an organization changes, a new set of norms are put in place, a new way of working, and they have to be accepted and understood and implemented. And over time, they become the new norms. Building consensus amongst customers and stakeholders on specific changes designed to better meet their needs. Well, a consensus means total agreement It means getting an agreement between the customers and the stakeholders. The customers who ultimately are in charge of production. If we think about it, it's the customers who dictate the production. They're the ones who require a certain style of product with certain functionality, certain attributes, which is what they buy. So it's the customers who buy it, and therefore it's the customers who drive the market. But having said that, organizations can put out new products to the market to see if customers would prefer the new products. So now we have the introduction of the stakeholders into this type of development. And the stakeholders in this case perhaps would be the workers, the line managers, the departmental managers, the marketing personnel, and so on. And they're involved in the innovation of the product and getting the customers to accept the new innovated product. So there is a consensus between the customers and the stakeholders as to what type of product should be on the market. So there is an agreement, and the customers will buy the product. That's the main point. It's the customers who ultimately are in charge of the amount of production that takes place and the style and quality of the product that's put on the market. Planning, testing and implementing all aspects of the transition from one organizational structure or business process to another. Well, it's imperative that the management carefully plan and test and implement all aspects of the movement from one structure to the next. There's going to be change. The structure is going to change. Well, it can't just change randomly. That would be a disaster. So it must change in line with some plan. And the plan itself must be subject to testing and to detailed scrutiny and discussions, and it should involve a wide range of personnel to get different perspectives. And then finally, the plan is implemented. Excuse me. Now, change management methodologies. Well, we should choose from one of several approaches. When we change something, we should not just use a single approach. If a company is changing its production line, or it's changing its marketing strategy or whatever, it shouldn't just impose it from the top. It really should discuss with the stakeholders, discuss with the people who are working on the particular tasks, try to get a wide set of views back and take different approaches, perhaps implemented differently or slowly in some places, or add incentives in certain areas, or several approaches should be taken. Not just simply say we wish to change and then impose the change, because the imposition of the change may alienate customers, may alienate the stakeholders, the immediate stakeholders, the stakeholders within the organization. So several approaches should be taken, and the robustness of the proposal should be fortified by those several approaches. Use a checklist, and checklists should be used to ensure several things, and I'll go through a list of these. But use a checklist. It's always important to make sure that nothing is forgotten or nothing's been missed out. So in the planning and implementation of change, the management should have an agreed checklist of what needs to be done, and this should be carefully thought out in advance. First of all, there should be methodical planning. It should be planned in great detail. Methodical planning is essential. It's crucial that every aspect of the change is anticipated, written down, discussed, and contingencies are developed in case something goes wrong or there's some deviation from the plan. So it's important that there is a strong method, and method is widely understood, a strong method in place, a method of moving from the current state to the new state. The method, how it will be done, should be clearly stated, clearly articulated, so that the people who are involved have clear understanding of what's going to happen. There should be appropriate project support. It goes without saying. Whenever a change happens, it should be supported. It should be experts in the sense of employees who know the rationale for the change and know the implications of the change and the technicalities of the change, and they should be available to help and support those who are working with the change situation. And of course, effective communications is essential. It's absolutely vital that everyone employed on the project or working with the change should be kept in the loop. They should understand what's happening. They should understand where the project's got to, how the change is coming along, the implications, and so on. So there should be good communications, as far as possible, quite open communications between all of the personnel involved. The stakeholders should be engaged. They should want the change. There should not be resistance to change. Resistors will slow down the process, they will detract from the process. But once a change is felt to be desirable, it's been worked through, it's been thought about, it's the issues, the downsides, the problems have been worked on and thought about and overcome, then the rationale or the reasons for disengagement have been removed. So the stakeholders should be on board. They should want the change. They should see its advantages. And that's a part of resistance mitigation. Wherever there is residual pockets of resistance to the change, people who are still skeptical or still worried about the change, they should be brought on board through discussions, communications, involvement, and so on. There should be ongoing training to make sure that everyone involved in the switchover from the old state to the new state are appropriately trained. And that could be a big task for the HR department, for the human resource department, to ensure that training programs are put in place and that everyone understands what's required of them in the new situation. And there should be implementation monitoring. It's important that when a current state is being changed into a new state, that the implementation, the changeover, is being monitored to make sure it's in line with what was planned. And there are no problems that's going to knock it off course. It should be implemented smoothly according to the plan. If the plans have been worked out, well thought out and discussed and even perhaps dry run in some mock setting, if all of this has taken place, there should be no surprises. So the implementation should be monitored just to make sure that everything runs smoothly. Now, the critical success factors in this situation, well, it's important that the senior management gives strong support to the change. If the senior management are not on board, it's not going to work. If junior management are implementing changes, then resistors, the people who don't like the change, can always say, look, the top management have not approved this, it's not part of company policy, we don't agree. So it's important that top management are on board for the change, otherwise it'll either slow down or stop completely. There should be effective planning. it's important that the switchover, the change that's been proposed, is properly planned. It should be properly planned, it should be written down, it should be clearly understood, it should be disseminated amongst all of the people involved. They should have copies, they should understand it, should be able to make comments on it, annotate the notes, ask questions. So it should be effectively planned. There should be very clear vision and well-defined scope. How big is the changeover? How big is the change that's been proposed? A very clear vision, and there should be measurable objectives tied to the strategic direction. Measurable objectives means the timing of the change and the advantages of the change. Can these be quantified? If they can be quantified, how? And how can they be measured? And how can they be monitored as the change has been implemented to make sure that they're actually going to deliver the advantages that were envisaged? There should be a high-level change champion. Somebody within the organization should be picked out to push through the change. This is the person, perhaps a manager, who's got good communication skills, who's got good leadership qualities, got a good personality, who can bring people along with him or her. This is the change champion. This is the person who's going to make sure the change takes place and takes place in accordance to the plan, in accordance with the plan. There should be a dedicated skills project team. The team should be well versed in what is required. They should be dedicated to bringing about the change, and they should be skilled in all aspects of the work and of the changed conditions that are going to be brought about. And of course there should be a detailed communications plan. A detailed communications plan is vital to make sure that everyone involved knows exactly what's going on, what are the issues, what are the problems, what are the advantages, what has been achieved, and so on. The detailed communication plan could involve calling regular meetings or making newsletters available through the intranet, the local area network that's perhaps the company uses, or some means of communications. So there should be some way of communicating what's happening. Now let's have a few words about the communications plan, since it is so important. This informs all stakeholders of the reasons, the benefits, and the details of the change. That's what the plan is focused on. It involves everyone that will be affected by the change. So everybody who's affected by the change should know why the change is taking place, what are the advantages of the change, and what the change will mean for them, and what support they will get in implementing the change and working with the change conditions when it's brought fully into play. It should include a sponsor roadmap, a resistance management plan, and a training plan to upgrade skills. So it should contain a roadmap. The roadmap shows where the company is now, where it wants to be, and how it's going to get there, and what are the staging posts along the way, what it needs to achieve by certain times, and what are the issues that are likely to be encountered at certain parts of the journey from where the company is now to where it wants to be. And a resistance management plan, well, some employees may disagree with the plan or may have problems about working under the new conditions, and there should be some resistance management plan to overcome these issues. And of course there should be a training plan put forward by the organisation to ensure that operators and line managers and so on have the skills to deal with the new situation, that their skill set has been updated to accommodate the new requirements. You should monitor and fine-tune the plans. So a communications plan can be used to take feedback from people working on implementing the change and can fine-tune the change, can discuss with the implementers issues as they happen. Perhaps despite all the planning, some small issues might have got through that weren't anticipated, and the communications plan should allow for monitoring, and it should allow for fine-tuning as it goes through, and be able to communicate this right throughout the organization to everyone to say minor modifications were required, and make sure there is approval right throughout the organization, so that if there are any objections or any comments, they're fed back efficiently to the change champion, who can then perhaps, if need be, call a wider meeting to discuss the implications of any fine-tuning that was felt necessary. So let's deal with the resistance to change, because that's an important issue. Not everyone may approve of what has been proposed. So in terms of resistance to change, well, the biggest threat to organizational progress is the resistance to change. As humans, we like routine. We like the way we've worked out our situation within the organization. We like our routines. We know that we do certain things at certain times, and everything is defined, and we don't have the worry of change, and we don't have to think too much. Everything is on automatic almost. So when change comes along, it's sometimes resisted. And the resistors, the people who resist the change, will be worried about the implications of the change for their routines and their involvement and even their future participation in the business. So it's important to deal effectively with the resistance to change. Change affects the business and the individual. So it's important to realize that when companies propose change, it's going to change the organization. It may change the organizational structure. It may change processes and production processes or office layout, or it may change many aspects of the business. But, and it's a big issue, it also changes the way the individuals relate to the business. Individuals relate to the business as it's currently configured. This is what they're used to. When the business changes, they are in a sense now expected to relate to a new business. The perception is it's a new business. It's not actually a new business, it's just a changed business, but they see it differently. They see new routines, new processes, new layouts. It's as if they have moved company. So many of them will resist it. They will be upset about the changes, and there needs to be a plan to accommodate that set of concerns and to address the concerns. After all, the people who may be concerned may be the ones with particular skills that are required. And the company really can't afford to lose key workers. Workers who have many years of experience within the business and understand many aspects of the business, and then simply because some aspects of the business has changed, these workers leave. That would be a big problem, perhaps, for the business. Performance tends to change slowly. Well, with the resistance to change, then performance, people still work at the same rate. People work within their capacity. The changes that are implemented, if they're designed to bring about efficiency improvements, these have to be carefully thought out, because extra burden on the workers may bolster up their resistance to the change. So it's important that any anticipated advantages from the change are carefully worked out, bearing in mind that workers have set routines and have set capacities. It's best when change is proposed. It's best when there is collaboration, and it's an interactive process. The line management, the workers on the shop floor, the middle management. It's best if there is a communication system that enables feedback and collaboration and sort of a community plan for the business. Community in the sense that if we look at the business as almost like a community involving the stakeholders, all the stakeholders, the people on the shop floor, the line management, the middle management, try to get communications at all levels and get them to collaborate, then a better plan and a better process will emerge with less resistance, because the workers feel involved. They feel involved. They've had their contribution. They've made points. They've argued over certain positions and argued that certain things should happen, certain things should not happen. At least they've been heard. They've had their say, and that would perhaps reduce resistance. Make sure that there is an openness about what is likely to happen. There's no hidden agenda. Make sure that it's an honest and open exercise. There's nothing subversive or below the surface here. The company is proposing, let's say, a change in its working practices, a change in its layout, a change in its design, or whatever. The company is proposing some change. Be honest and open. The reason for the change is greater efficiency, or the changing market conditions, or technological change, or whatever. That is the reason, and be honest and open. And sharing that with the workers and the line managers and the middle managers and so on, that will be appreciated. It'll get rid of some of the resistance to change. They will feel that there is an openness and an honesty, and they will come along with the plan more readily because of that openness. It's better that change comes from within the workforce, if possible. It's not always possible, because technology is outside of the business. Technology is an extraneous force, and technology happens. It's something we deal with that comes from outside. So in that case, the workforce may have opinions about the adaptation of the technology, but generally speaking, the workforce don't develop that technology. Customer requirements may change because market conditions, or because of technology again, or because of the economic factors in the country, or there may be a whole host of factors leading to changing customer requirements. And that is also coming from outside, and there's very little the company can do about it. The marketing section will report back changing market trends. The company responds to that. But if possible, sometimes it may be possible that change can be internal. It's simply looking at working processes and working practices. Perhaps the workforce can make suggestions to improve efficiency or improving working conditions, which will eventually improve productivity. Now, if the suggestions come from the workforce, those are the best ones, because there is no resistance to change. It came from the workforce, and the management went along with it. So there are no issues to be addressed there. Now, effective change management tools. Well, planning, and there's a whole series of issues under planning. We could have a SWOT analysis, for example, a strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats analysis in planning. Whenever a plan comes to light, we tend to try and work out what are the strengths of the plan, the weaknesses, opportunities, the threats, so we can work out a little SWOT analysis for the plan to see if it's a good idea. What's the purpose of the plan? What's it trying to do? Why change? What's the vision? Where will it take the company? If this plan is implemented, where will it take the company? What will the company be like in a year, 2 years, 5 years' time? What about sponsorship discussions? I mean, looking at who will sponsor the changes that are taking place. The company obviously will finance it, but who will subscribe most to it? Who will put in the effort? Who will adopt it and bring about the changes? Who within the company will stand up and work with this? Don't forget, if the plan fails, then somebody's reputation may be on the line as well, and their career may be adversely affected. So the change team, that needs to be picked, and it needs to be picked in a way that the change team agree. It's easy to pick because people want to be on the change team, they want to be involved, and try and get a wide dispersion of opinion on the team, not all from one department. Try to get outsiders. So if it's change within the marketing department, get people off the shop floor to participate. Get people from production, get people from HR to participate. And as outsiders, they're looking into the marketing department. They haven't got an expertise in there, they haven't got the knowledge that these people are dealing with, but they can make comments from the outside. And sometimes it's best to have comments from external people. They can see things sometimes a bit clearer than people who are on top of the situation. There should be commitment to change. That's essential. If there's no commitment, it's not going to happen. So it's important that there is commitment. Sometimes we have an elevator speech. An elevator speech is a speech someone considers the change, considers what would be required by the change, the requirements in terms of working practice and changes to routines and so on, looks at the benefits of the change, and then is able to communicate this in a so-called elevator speech. They're able to communicate it to all of the workers within the business, the shop floor, the line management, the middle management, the top management. This person's able to communicate it, and this elevator speech may become a document in itself which motivates people to commit to the changes. We'll talk about elevator speech in a digression towards the end of this session as well. I just want to have a few more words about it. But for the moment, it's how we would get commitment. It's someone, if you like, selling the idea, promoting the idea, and getting commitment. It's important that we have stakeholder analysis, that we know who's on board, who's against. It's important to understand why certain stakeholders want the change and why certain stakeholders may not want the change. What are the issues? What are the concerns? What is the motivation behind their positions? Try to work out their motivations behind the positions to see what their commitments are, and see if something can be done to ameliorate or to reduce the resistance, but also sometimes to wind down, to tone down the commitment on the part of the very pro-change managers. Sometimes people want to rush into change. It's important that the change is well thought out. It takes time to reflect on the proposed changes, come up with counter proposals, and carefully weigh all the checks and balances. So it's important that everyone's position be clearly understood. A good stakeholder analysis to see who's involved, who will oppose, who will support, and the motivations behind each one. The Rasky model is one that's dealt with in a separate video, so I won't go through it here. There's a separate video on this one, so please search out the Rasky model and have a look at it. It's quite straightforward, very simple to understand and deal with. But it is the subject of a separate video, so I won't take time on it here. Communications planning. Make sure that the communications networks are well oiled, that they're working well and people know where to get information. Whatever the culture of the business is, maybe information is put on a notice board, or it may be that there are weekly meetings, or there are a works committee, or that the line managers keep the workers up to date by taking time to explain what the company is doing and what are the issues and so on. Making sure everyone understands the current position, and also making sure that there is an honesty and openness, if at all possible, without giving away trade secrets or commercial secrets. There is an honesty and openness on the part of the company, so that the workers understand what the company is trying to do, how well it's doing or how poorly it's doing, the state of the market, the state of the technology, and so on. After all, it's the workers' livelihoods, and in a sense, in a big sense, they have a right to know, because the money that they receive in wages and salaries and so on, this is what feeds their families, so it's important they understand. Build and implement. Well, project plan and results tracking. Well, make sure there is a project plan. The project plan should be detailed. It should be well thought out. The product of many hours of discussions and reflection and thinking back how certain proposals were made and the implications of the proposals, and finally when the project plan comes to fruition, when no extra comments can be taken on board because there are none. There's nothing else that can be added. Then it's important to start tracking the results to see, as it's implemented, what changes, what issues, and there is support all the way through the organization. There is a keenness and a support to implement this because it's seen as a good idea. Again, the communications plan comes to the fore to make sure that there is a good communications plan right throughout the implementation and the build stage. The build stage being the implementation stage of the new situation, the change that's been proposed. So make sure that everyone is kept abreast of how far the implementation has gone, what issues have been encountered, what problems, how they were overcome, who was involved, what are the implications for the workers, the line managers, the organization of the business, and so on. So keep communications flowing. There should be a risk analysis. There should always be a risk analysis because in any change there is a risk. There's a risk that it will damage the business. So there should be caution right throughout the whole set of discussions on implementing change or the proposal for change to make sure it will not damage the business. It will not damage the business's ability to produce the products that the customers want. And there's the transition period when the company is almost running two systems. It needs to keep the business running, so it'll have the old system continuing, and the new system will be phased in. It might be phased in bit at a time, section by section, or it might be a complete switchover. On Monday morning, the new system starts. But the transition and the monitoring needs to be dealt with in a way that there is communications throughout the shop floor, and there is a commitment to the change, and they have seen it grow from nothing to what it is just before it takes over, or when it just is implemented. And there's a culture about this. There's the people who have implemented a change can talk to each other. They understand. They're bonded together almost through the experience of putting in the change. And this is reflected in the way they talk about the change and the way they communicate with each other about the change, because they're involved in a switchover. The workers who are going to manage and deal with the changed situation, they will need to talk to each other as well. And in a sense, it's a verbal storytelling type of situation that I tried this yesterday and it didn't work. However, if you do it this way, it will work, and it'll work really well. It's storytelling. It's a verbal form of informal communications. There should be refresher training. It's important that the workers are kept up to speed. The workers all the time have recourse to the HR department. The HR department puts on training programs, so the workers feel that their skills are updated. They feel more secure as well, because the company is investing in them, investing in people. So they are more committed to the organization. They feel that, okay, there has been a change in the organization, but the organization is supporting them. The organization is with them in their efforts to manage and run with the new situation. And developing a source of tips and tricks. Well, it's always the case that when a new system is introduced, there is the official way to do everything, and eventually workers will find that yes, the official way works. However, if it's done slightly differently, it'll be better. It'll work faster. So although the book recommends, or the manual recommends doing it that way, we do it this way because it is better. And that is born out of experience. It happens all the time. It happens in computing. We buy a new computer, we get the manual, we're told how to deal with the computer. And if we go onto the forums on the internet, we'll find people posting loads of tips and tricks, and if you hold down the following keys and press certain key, certain thing will happen, and it'll be much more efficient. You can bypass everything. So it's always the case. It's human nature, and that's part of the innovative part of being a human. That's the nice thing about being a human. We are constantly on the lookout and working out situations that will facilitate our work and make our lives easier, and will use the technology and use the processes more effectively. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's important to celebrate wins. And by that I mean when targets are met, the company should applaud the people who have met the targets. They should congratulate them. It doesn't cost anything to clap somebody on the back and say, well done. When a job is well done, it's done with good quality, delivered on time, delivered within budget. That job is well done. Nothing else can be expected of the people who did that. They have met everything that was required of them, and they should be congratulated for that. It bolsters their morale, it motivates them, there's more commitment, and especially when a new system has been implemented. So there's been a change in the organization, and now the workers are working with the change situation and bringing in the results that were anticipated from the new system. Then congratulate the workers. It's a job well done. Also, there should be a reward for performance. Congratulating them is excellent, it's good, but they should also share in the benefits. This change has taken place for some reason, and being a commercial organization, generally speaking, it can take place because the company has to implement the change because it wishes to survive because of competitive pressure, or it could be it wants to increase its profits or decrease its costs, but same thing really, well, linked I should say, but it wants to increase its profits, let's say. So perhaps some reward, financial reward to the workers, some bonus or some pay increase to recompense them for all they've been through in switching over from one system to the other, learning a new set of techniques, a new set of skills, all the worries that they've had perhaps about the change, just in case the change would not work or lead to redundancies or whatever. So congratulate them, perhaps some sort of reward. Now, that's really all we need to do about change management. But I did say earlier that I wanted to have a few words about the elevator speech. I know it's a digression, but let's just have a few words about that, because this is how the how the project could be delivered. An elevator speech is a brief, persuasive speech that you use to spark interest in what your organization does. It's a very short speech. It could be written. It could be a written document, but generally speaking, an elevator speech, it's delivered, it's spoken. You can also use elevator speeches to create interest in a project, an idea, or a product, or in yourself. So an elevator speech is about some situation, about a product or an idea or something. And a good elevator pitch should last no longer than a short elevator ride. Elevator, a lift in a building, 20 to 30 seconds. So let's say a speech 30 seconds long. Well, if the proposed change that we're talking about in the context of this class, if the proposed change can't be explained in 30 seconds, the advantages of the proposed change can't be explained in 30 seconds, there is something wrong. 30 seconds is actually quite a long time. The person delivering it should be able to make the pitch that the change is desirable for the following reasons, and then go to explain the reasons very briefly within a matter of 20 to 30 seconds. Now I know it sounds a little crazy, but that's the world in which we live. We want information and we want it succinctly put. And when a change is recommended within a business, it should be capable of being articulated in that time scale. And from there, of course, meetings will follow and communications and all the things we've talked about in this class will follow on. And these will be long, lengthy, detailed discussions and plans and reflection periods and so on. But the initial elevator speech should be very short. And if that elevator speech doesn't capture the imaginations of the senior management, the middle management and so on, it's a failure. If it captures their imagination, then they will take it to the next level. The next level being starting to look at the proposal in more details, planning, and then we get into the whole idea of change that we've been discussing here. So the elevator speech is actually quite important. It's at the very start of the whole process. And if it's successful, it'll lead to change. If it's not successful, it was an idea, but it wasn't an idea worth carrying forward. So that's all I'm going to deal with in this session. It's been quite a lengthy session. I expect you to stop the video many times, rewind it and look over the ideas and make notes. But it's a very important area. Change management is important. It's how we get innovation into our industry, how we get different products, how we develop our skills, our communications, and how we develop the whole culture of business. And in globalized world, this is important. That's it. I'm going to leave it at that. So thank you for watching.